The grand chamber of Station Nexus 7 stretched high above the assembled delegates, its ceiling a transparent dome showing the swirling colors of the nebula beyond. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the curved rows of seats, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some stood on two legs, others floated in specialized chambers. But today, all eyes turned toward the small platform at the center where two humans stood. Watched her colleague gesture enthusiastically at the holographic display floating before them. Images of dragons breathing fire, phoenixes rising from ash, and warriors performing impossible feats cycled through the projection. His voice carried across the chamber with genuine excitement. "And this legend tells of a master who could walk on water," said, pulling up an ancient painting. "Another speaks of warriors who could fight for days without rest, who could break stone with their bare hands, who lived for hundreds of years through discipline and training." A sound erupted from the section of the chamber. It started as a low rumble, then built into full, booming laughter. Ambassador rose from his seat, his four arms spreading wide, his blue chitinous armor gleaming under the lights. "Forgive me," said, though his tone carried no apology, "but this is what Earth presents to the Galactic Council: children's stories, fantasies told around primitive fires." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably, others nodded in agreement. Smile faltered. "These are important cultural artifacts. Every civilization has mythology that reflects their values and—" "Mythology, yes," interrupted, descending the steps toward the central platform. His heavy footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. "We all have such tales, the once believed in gods of probability. My own ancestors, the twin suns. But we outgrew these fantasies when we embraced science, when we engineered our bodies to become the warriors our myths only imagined." He stopped at the edge of the platform, towering over both humans. They were naturally large and stood nearly 8 feet tall. His four arms flexed, displaying muscles enhanced through of genetic refinement. "Your legends speak of dragons that breathe fire," continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "We have plasma weapons. Your tales mention beings that heal from any wound. Our regenerative capabilities can regrow lost limbs in days. You speak of immortal warriors. Our extend far beyond your brief centuries through biological engineering." More delegates nodded. The ambassador, whose crystalline body refracted light into rainbow patterns, spoke up. "Ambassador, while your tone is perhaps harsh, you raise a valid point. Earth is new to the galactic community. Perhaps they do not yet understand that we measure civilizations by their achievements, not their storytelling abilities." Remained still throughout the exchange, her face calm, her hands folded before her. She had said nothing during his presentation, had not reacted to his mockery, but those who looked closely might have noticed the slight change in her breathing, the way her posture had subtly shifted. Tried again. "With respect, Ambassador, you misunderstand. These aren't just stories. They represent a cultural tradition of—" "Of what?" Laughed again, and this time several other delegates joined him. "Of wishful thinking, of a species trying to convince itself it was special before it learned about the wider universe." He turned to address the full chamber. "I have reviewed Earth's technological capabilities, adequate but unremarkable. I have studied their biological specifications. Standard carbon-based, no exceptional features. And now I see their cultural legacy is equally ordinary. The same tired myths every developing species tells itself." The mockery in his voice cut through the chamber. "Creatures that breathe fire, warriors who cannot die, energy that flows through the body giving impossible power." He shook his head, all four arms gesturing dismissively. "If even one of your precious legends were real, humanity might be worth respecting. But they are fake, obvious fabrications from a species trying to seem more impressive than it is." Silence fell over the chamber. It was the kind of insult that demanded response, yet what could be said? Earth had no to demonstrate, no genetic enhancements to display. They were, by galactic standards, newcomers with nothing special to offer but their stories. Then raised her hand. The gesture was simple, casual even, but something about the way she did it made every delegate in the chamber focus on her. She had not moved much during the entire exchange, had seemed content to let handle the presentation. Now she stepped forward, and though she stood barely 5.5 feet tall, she commanded attention. "Ambassador," she said quietly, her voice somehow carrying to every corner of the vast chamber despite its softness. "You said if even one of our legends were real, humanity might be worth respecting." Turned to face her fully, his expression amused. "I did, though I suspect you're about to explain how they're all metaphors or some such nonsense." "No," replied. "I was going to ask if you would like me to prove one." The chamber erupted in whispers. Delegates leaned toward each other, their various forms of communication creating a buzz that filled the space. Its amusement deepened. "Prove a legend," he spread all 4 arms wide. "And which legend would you prove, small human, the fire-breathing, the immortality, the mystical energy?" He turned to play to his audience. "Perhaps she will fly around the chamber like your mythical phoenixes." More laughter rippled through the seats, though some delegates remained quiet, watching with curiosity. Ambassador's crystalline form pulsed with thoughtful light. Commander Vex, the station's security chief, shifted on his 6 legs, antennae twitching with interest. Waited for the laughter to fade. When she spoke again, her voice remained level, almost gentle. "I will demonstrate whichever legend you choose, Ambassador, under whatever observation and monitoring the Council deems appropriate. Scientific instruments, energy scanners, biological monitors, whatever you require to ensure there is no deception." Turned to her, his eyes wide. "What are you?" She raised a hand slightly and he fell silent. Her attention remained fixed on. The ambassador's amusement began to shift toward something else. Uncertainty, perhaps, or calculation. "You're serious?" "Completely." "And when you fail," his voice hardened, "when you cannot produce your dragons or your warriors who walk on water or your mystical energy, what then?" "If I fail," said calmly, "Earth will formally acknowledge in all diplomatic records that our legends are, as you say, fake. We will issue a public statement to that effect." The chamber went completely silent. Even the whispers stopped. This was no small offer. It would be a humiliation that would follow humanity's diplomatic efforts for generations. His eyes narrowed. "And if by some miracle you succeed, then the Empire will issue a formal apology to Earth for today's insults and grant us preferential trade status in 3 key sectors of our choosing." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Preferential trade status with the was worth billions in credits, access to dozens of resource-rich systems. It was a massive stake. "Done," said immediately, his 4 hands clenching into fists. "Prepare your demonstration, human. The Council will observe, and when this is over, your species will learn the cost of pride." Bowed slightly, the gesture respectful despite everything. "Thank you, Ambassador. I suggest we reconvene in the station's main arena in 2 hours. That should give your people time to set up whatever monitoring equipment you require." As she turned to leave the platform, hurried after her, whispering urgently, "What are you thinking? We can't actually prove any of this. The legends are real," she finished quietly, glancing back at the assembled delegates with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than her apparent age. "The legends were always real. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you mistake history for fairy tales." Behind them, the chamber exploded into chaos as delegates shouted questions and made urgent communications to their, but walked steadily toward the exit, her breathing already beginning to change, her body already preparing for what was to come. The challenge had been issued, and soon the galaxy would see Earth as it truly was. The main arena of Station Nexus 7 had never been prepared so quickly. Within an hour of challenge, maintenance crews had cleared the central floor while technicians installed sensor arrays along every wall. Energy monitors, biological scanners, gravitational detectors, and devices whose functions most humans couldn't even name were positioned in overlapping fields to ensure complete observation. Earth's senior ambassador pulled into a side corridor as the preparations continued. His face showed deep concern, the lines around his eyes more pronounced than usual. "Please," he said quietly, ensuring they were alone. "Tell me you have a plan. Tell me you're not just making a desperate bluff to defend our honor." Turned to face him fully. In the harsh lighting of the corridor, she looked younger than her 32 years, almost fragile next to the ambassador's solid frame. But her eyes held something ancient, something that made take an involuntary step back. "No bluff, sir," she said softly. "I'm going to show them exactly what I said I would show them." "But the legends are real," she smiled slightly. "Sir, did you never wonder why Earth's diplomatic corps specifically requested me for this mission? Why someone with my particular background was chosen to represent our culture?" Stared at her. "I thought it was because of your degrees in ancient history and comparative mythology, your language skills, your diplomatic training." "Those too," agreed. "But mainly because the ministry knew this moment would come eventually. The galaxy would mock us, would dismiss our heritage as primitive fantasy. And when that happened, someone needed to be here who could respond appropriately." Before could ask more questions, another human approached from down the corridor. She was tall and moved with the fluid grace of a trained fighter, though she wore the simple uniform of a military observer. Her name badge read. "The arena is ready," said, nodding respectfully to. "Full sensor coverage, multiple redundant systems. They're being very thorough." "Good," replied. "Let them watch closely. Let them record everything." His lips curved into a small smile. "Is having a panic attack in the observation room. He keeps saying we're about to become the laughingstock of the galaxy. Is a good researcher, but he's never actually visited the mountain monasteries," said. "He knows the legends as stories, not as living practice." Something passed between and then, an understanding that excluded completely. He felt suddenly like he was missing crucial information, like there were layers to Earth's diplomatic mission he had never been briefed on. "Ambassador," said, turning back to him, "what I'm about to do will change how the galaxy sees humanity. I need you to trust that this is necessary and that I know what I'm doing. Can you do that?" Looked at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "Just try not to start an intergalactic incident." "No promises," muttered under her breath, earning a sharp look from the ambassador. The three of them made their way to the arena. The observation decks that ringed the circular fighting space were already filling with delegates from across the galaxy. Word had spread fast. The new human species was either about to prove something incredible or suffer a humiliation that would echo through diplomatic channels for decades. Either way, no one wanted to miss it. Commander Vex, the station's security chief, met them at the arena entrance. His compound eyes reflected the lights in fractal patterns as he regarded. "We have medical teams standing by," he said in his clicking, translated voice. "And I must ask, will this demonstration involve anything that could damage the station or endanger observers?" "No damage to the station," assured him. "As for danger to observers, they're separated by reinforced shielding, correct? Shielding rated to withstand plasma weapons and kinetic impacts up to." "Then they'll be fine," said calmly, walking past him into the arena. The floor was a perfect circle 50 meters across, made of a material that could withstand almost any punishment. The walls rose high, topped by the observation decks where thousands of beings now watched. Massive displays showed readouts from the sensor arrays, currently registering only baseline environmental conditions. Was already there, standing in full ceremonial combat armor. The suit was a masterpiece of engineering, energy shields, neural acceleration interfaces, strength enhancers, and weapon systems all integrated into a form-fitting second skin. He looked like a war god from some ancient pantheon, four arms crossed, face set in confident anticipation. "So you actually came," he said as approached. "I half expected you to flee the station." "I gave my word," replied simply. She wore only simple training clothes, loose pants and a light shirt, both in plain white. No armor, no visible weapons, nothing that suggested she was prepared for any kind of demonstration at all. The contrast between them was almost comical. In his advanced armor, bristling with technology, in clothes that looked like she was about to do morning exercises in a park. Scientists, whose species prided themselves on logic and reason, spoke through the arena's communication system. "We are ready to begin monitoring. All sensors are calibrated and recording. Human, please state for the record which legend you intend to demonstrate." Moved to the center of the arena, her bare feet silent on the hard floor. When she spoke, her voice was amplified throughout the space, reaching every delegate in the observation decks and being broadcast to millions across the galaxy. "I will demonstrate the legend of Chi," she said. "Known by many names in Earth's history: Kai, prana, inner energy, life force. The practice of cultivation, of refining the energy that exists within all living things and using it to transcend normal biological limitations." Laughter boomed through the arena. Mystical energy, of course. The oldest, laziest myth in the galaxy. Invisible power that conveniently can't be measured or proven. "Then you should have nothing to fear from my demonstration," said calmly. Scientist's voice came again. "Human, our sensors are designed to detect all known forms of energy: electromagnetic, thermal, kinetic, gravitational, quantum fluctuations. If this, Chi, exists, we will detect it." "I'm counting on that," replied. She settled into a basic stance, feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent. Her hands rested loosely at her sides. To anyone watching, she simply looked like she was standing still, doing nothing. Then she began to breathe. The change was subtle at first. Her chest rose and fell in a specific rhythm, slow and controlled. Each breath seemed deeper than the last, as if she was drawing air from some bottomless well. In the observation deck, leaned forward, gripping the railing. "What is she doing?" he whispered to. "I don't know," the ambassador admitted, his eyes fixed on the arena floor. But standing nearby, smiled slightly. "She's gathering." On the massive displays showing sensor readouts, numbers began to change. Slowly at first, then more rapidly. His translated voice carried a note of confusion. "Unusual readings detected. Biological energy signature increasing." "No, that's not correct. The energy is concentrating, not increasing. It's being drawn from everywhere." His breathing continued, each cycle bringing more visible effects. The air around her seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from sun-baked stone, but the temperature readings weren't changing. Shifted his stance, uncertainty creeping into his confident expression. "Tricks with the sensors," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "The sensors are functioning properly," insisted. "Multiple redundant systems all showing the same phenomenon. Energy is concentrating around the human at impossible rates. Cellular activity is increasing. Mitochondrial output has risen by. This cannot be right. 4,000% increase." Murmurs swept through the observation decks. Delegates who had come to witness a humiliation were now leaning forward, their various sensory organs focused intently on the small human in the center of the arena. His eyes remained closed, her face serene, but everyone watching could now see the effect clearly. Light seemed to gather around her, faint but unmistakable. It moved with her breathing, pulsing in rhythm with each inhalation and exhalation. Muscle density fluctuating, his voice rose in pitch. Bone structure reinforcing, Neural activity patterns unlike anything in our databases. How is this possible without genetic modification, without technological assistance? His eyes opened. They glowed, not brightly, not like floodlights or energy weapons. But there was a definite golden luminescence in her gaze, a light that seemed to come from within rather than being reflected from without. When she spoke, her voice carried a resonance that made the arena floor vibrate. "This is the foundation technique of chi cultivation," she said. "What you call legend, ambassador, we call discipline. What you call myth, we call practice. Your people spent engineering your bodies through technology and genetics. We spent perfecting our spirits through training and will." She took a step forward and the sensors screamed warnings. Energy readings spiked. The shimmering air around her intensified, becoming almost solid-looking, like a second skin made of pure force. "This is what one human can achieve," continued, her glowing eyes fixed on. "Not through modification, not through machinery, but through understanding the energy that flows through all living things and learning to command it." Activated his combat systems. His armor hummed to life, shields forming a blue corona around his body, neural enhancers accelerating his reflexes to superhuman speeds. "Let's test these claims," he growled, all forearms flexing. Settled into a ready stance, the golden glow around her intensifying. "As you wish, Ambassador. Let me prove to you and the entire galaxy that Earth's legends were never fake. They were simply waiting for someone foolish enough to challenge them." The arena fell silent, thousands of beings holding their breath across dozens of different respiratory systems. Then charged, and the demonstration truly began. Moved faster than most beings could track. His armor's neural enhancers boosted his already impressive reflexes to levels that made him blur across the arena floor. 4 arms extended, each capable of crushing steel, reaching for the small human who had dared to challenge him. Wasn't there. She had moved with such smoothness that it didn't look like movement at all, more like she had simply stopped existing in one location and started existing in another. The golden light trailing behind her was the only indication she had moved at all. 4 fists struck the arena floor where she had been standing. The impact cracked the reinforced surface, sending spiderweb fractures spreading outward. The force monitors on the displays registered enough kinetic energy to destroy a small vehicle, but was already behind him. "Too slow," she said softly. Spun, his armor's sensors screaming warnings. All 4 arms lashed out in a pattern that should have been impossible to evade in the confined space. Each strike was precisely calculated by the suit's combat computer, each angle of attack designed to eliminate escape routes. Flowed between the strikes like water moving around stones. Her feet barely seemed to touch the ground. Each movement was minimal, efficient, wasting no energy. The golden glow around her intensified with each breath, and the sensors continued to register impossible readings. In the observation deck, scientist's voice had risen to near panic. Energy concentration continuing to increase. Her cellular output is now 8,000% above baseline. The physics don't support this. Where is the energy coming from? Spoke quietly to no one in particular. From everything, the air, the ground, the vibrations of the station itself. She's drawing it all in, refining it, making it hers. Turned to stare at her. You've seen this before." "I practice it myself," admitted, still watching the arena. "Though I'm nowhere near her level, most of us aren't. What is showing them is intermediate mastery, respectable but not even close to what the true masters can do. There are more." His voice came out as a whisper. "On Earth alone, millions who practice to some degree. Most never get past basic health and longevity benefits. Some, like me, reach military applicable levels. And then there are those like who dedicate their entire lives to the path. Eyes never left the arena floor. And above them are the masters who make look like a beginner." In the arena, had stopped his wild attacks and was now reassessing. His armor's combat computer was analyzing his movements, trying to predict patterns, searching for weaknesses. But there were no patterns. Each movement was a response to the immediate moment, flowing naturally from whatever came before. "Enough games," snarled. He activated his armor's weapon systems. Energy built-in ports along his arms, preparing to discharge plasma bolts hot enough to melt through hull plating. Commander Vex's voice came urgently over the communications system. "Ambassador, lethal weapons were not authorized for this demonstration." "She said she would prove her legends," replied, his 4 arms spreading wide as energy crackled between them. "Let's see if she can back up her claims against real firepower." The plasma bolts discharged in a coordinated barrage, 4 streams of superheated energy converging on from different angles. There was no room to dodge, no time to move. The combat computer had calculated perfectly. Raised one hand, palm forward. What happened next made every scientist in the observation deck question their understanding of physics. The golden glow around's hand intensified to a brilliant shine, and the plasma bolt struck what could only be described as a barrier, not a technological shield, but something else, something organic yet impossibly strong. The energy dispersed around her in a perfect sphere, dissipating harmlessly into the air. The temperature in that exact spot spiked to thousands of degrees, but stood untouched at the center, her hand still raised, her expression calm. "Impossible," breathed. "Energy shields require generators, power sources. She's producing this from her own body." "Not producing," corrected. "Redirecting. The chi isn't creating new energy, it's taking what already exists and shaping it through will. It's the difference between making fire and controlling it." Stared at his target, his earlier confidence crumbling. "What are you?" he whispered. Lowered her hand. "I told you, I'm someone who practices what you call a legend. Now let me show you what that truly means." She moved forward, not running but walking, each step deliberate. The golden light around her had become almost solid-looking now, a visible aura that pulsed with each heartbeat. The arena floor beneath her feet showed slight depressions where she stepped, as if she weighed far more than her small frame suggested. Backed up, his armor's defense systems going to maximum. Shields layered upon shields, energy barriers that could withstand artillery fire. He planted his feet and prepared to meet her charge with all 4 arms ready to strike. Stopped just outside his reach. She settled into a basic stance, one that martial artists on Earth had practiced for thousands of years. Her right hand drew back, palm facing forward, fingers slightly curved. Her left hand extended toward, also palm forward. "This technique," she said quietly, her voice somehow carrying to every corner of the silent arena, "is called the single palm strike. It's one of the first combat applications students learn when they begin to understand chi flow. It's considered basic, elementary." She breathed in, slow and controlled. The golden light intensified. "But when executed properly," she continued, "it demonstrates the fundamental principle of internal energy cultivation. Force without requires strength and leverage. Force within requires only understanding and will." The sensors went wild. Energy readings spiked off the charts. Several monitoring devices actually shut down from overload. His voice came in frantic bursts. "Energy concentration at the focal point unprecedented. It's as if she's condensing the power of a small star into her palm. This violates thermodynamic principles. Where is it all coming from?" Thrust her palm forward. She didn't touch. Her hand stopped a full foot away from his armored chest, but that didn't matter. A visible wave of force erupted from her palm, golden light compressed into a devastating blast of pure kinetic energy. It struck shields and shattered them instantly. The layered energy barriers that could withstand plasma fire and explosive impacts popped like soap bubbles. The wave hits armor directly. The advanced alloy, designed to distribute impacts across its entire surface, cracked down the center line. Warning lights blazed across its surface as systems failed in cascade. And then flew backward. He traveled the full width of the arena, his four arms flailing, completely unable to control his trajectory. When he hit the far wall, the reinforced barrier that was designed to contain weapons fire, the impact was hard enough to make the entire structure shudder. Slid down the wall and collapsed to the floor. His armor sparked and smoked, half its systems completely offline. But the sensors showed his biological signs were stable, bruised, shocked, every nerve ending firing with overload signals, but alive and unharmed beyond temporary paralysis. The arena was absolutely silent. Stood in the center, her hand still extended from the strike, the golden glow around her beginning to fade as she slowly, deliberately released the gathered energy back into the environment. Her breathing returned to normal. The light in her eyes dimmed and then disappeared entirely. Within 30 seconds, she looked like an ordinary human again. Small, unimpressive by galactic standards, wearing simple training clothes. But no one watching would ever see her that way again. Scientist's voice came weakly over the communications system. All sensors confirmed. No technological assistance detected. No genetic modification. No external power source. The energy came from within her own body, gathered and directed through biological processes we don't understand. The readings they're impossible, but they're real. Turned to face the observation decks, addressing the thousands of delegates who sat in stunned silence. "You asked for proof of one legend," she said, her normal voice so quiet after the display of power that everyone strained to hear. "This is chi cultivation, the practice of refining life energy, the path that transforms a mortal into something more. On Earth, we have trained in these techniques for thousands of years. We have built schools and monasteries dedicated to perfecting them. We have masters who have practiced for centuries." She gestured to, who was being helped to his feet by medical personnel, his armor ruined but his body intact. "What I showed you today is intermediate-level mastery," continued. "Respectable among practitioners, but far from the highest achievements. There are humans who can fly without technology, who can live for hundreds of years, who can level mountains with their strikes. We kept these abilities quiet because we hoped the galaxy had evolved past weaponizing everything it encounters." She bowed slightly toward the observation decks, the gesture formal and respectful. Earth's legends were never fake, honored delegates. They were simply histories written in a language you didn't understand. The question now is, what will the galaxy do with this knowledge? The silence held for one more moment. Then the arena erupted into chaos as every delegate tried to speak at once, as communication systems overloaded with messages too, as the political and military implications of what they had just witnessed began to sink in. Walked calmly toward the exit, passing who stared at her with something between fear and awe. "The honor their agreements," he said hoarsely. "You will have your apology and your trade status." "Thank you," replied simply, and continued walking. As she left the arena, she found waiting for her in the corridor, along with whose expression suggested his entire understanding of reality had just been turned upside down. "Well," said with a slight smile, "that went better than the simulation predicted." "Simulation?" His voice came out strangled. "We've been preparing for this moment since Earth joined the galactic community," explained gently. "It was always going to happen eventually. Better to control the circumstances than to have our abilities discovered in crisis." She looked back toward the arena, where the chaos was still building. "Now comes the hard part," she said softly. "Now we have to teach the galaxy what we've spent learning ourselves, that true power doesn't come from technology or genetics. It comes from discipline, understanding, and the courage to look within rather than always reaching outward." Behind them, the galaxy's perception of humanity changed forever, and nothing would ever be the same again. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened exactly 4 hours after its demonstration. The main chamber was packed beyond capacity, with delegates standing in the aisles and overflow crowds watching from adjacent rooms. Representatives from species that rarely bothered with council sessions had suddenly found the proceedings intensely interesting. Chancellor, whose telepathic species had led the council for 3 centuries, called for order. Her mental voice touched every mind in the chamber simultaneously, a talent that made her uniquely qualified to manage thousands of beings who could barely communicate with each other under normal circumstances. This session will address the revelation provided by the human delegate's mental voice resonated. We have confirmed through multiple independent sensor arrays that what we witnessed was genuine. No technological assistance, no genetic modification, no deception. The question before us now is what this means for the galactic community. Immediately, dozens of delegates tried to speak at once. His mental presence pressed down gently but firmly, silencing them. Ambassador has agreed to answer questions, continued. I ask that we approach this with scientific curiosity rather than fear or greed. Stood at the central platform, looking small and ordinary in the vast chamber. She had changed from her training clothes into formal diplomatic attire, but somehow that made the contrast even more stark. This small, quiet human had just proven she could defeat one of the galaxy's most formidable warriors without breaking a sweat. The first question came from Ambassador of the, whose crystalline voice chimed like distant bells. Ambassador, you stated that what you demonstrated was intermediate-level mastery. Can you quantify the human population capable of such feats? On Earth alone, replied calmly, there are approximately 200 million practitioners of chi cultivation at various levels. Most practice for health, longevity, and spiritual development. They will never reach combat-applicable skills, and that's not their goal. Of those 200 million, perhaps 10 million have achieved what we would consider basic combat proficiency. 1 million have reached intermediate levels, and about 10,000 have achieved mastery. The numbers sent a ripple of shock through the chamber. 10,000 masters, each potentially as capable as what they had just witnessed, or more so. A delegate from the warlike species general leaned forward. His species had built an empire on military might, and his mechanical enhancements whirred as he moved. These masters, what are their capabilities? Paused, choosing her words carefully. I am not a master, General. I cannot speak from personal experience, but I have witnessed their abilities. Flight without technology, manipulation of elements, fire, water, earth, air. The ability to survive in environments that would kill unprotected beings, extending hundreds of years while maintaining physical youth. And yes, combat capabilities that would allow a single individual to pose a significant threat to military forces. Why? The question came from multiple delegates simultaneously, then resolved into Chancellor's singular voice. Why did humanity hide this? Why not reveal these capabilities when you joined the galactic community? For the first time, his expression showed something other than calm professionalism. Pain flickered across her features, old and deep. Because we know what happens when such abilities become known, she said quietly. We have our own history to learn from. On Earth, when chi cultivation was widely practiced and acknowledged, those with skill were constantly forced to choose sides in conflicts. They were as gods, hunted as demons, pressed into service as weapons. Wars were fought to control or destroy cultivation sects. Millions died in purges and power struggles. She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the weight of genuine sorrow. About 500 years ago, the cultivation community made a collective decision. We would go silent, hidden. We would let the world believe we were legends, myths, stories from a more superstitious age. We would practice in secret, pass our knowledge only to carefully chosen students, and wait for humanity to mature enough to handle the truth responsibly. And have they, asked gently, has humanity matured? We hoped so, admitted. We hoped joining a galactic community would mean we had evolved past using everything we discover as a weapon. But then Ambassador challenged us, and we had a choice: continue hiding and be forever dismissed as primitive storytellers, or reveal the truth and face the consequences. A new voice joined the discussion, coming from a wall screen. It was Earth's Minister of Hidden Affairs, speaking from a secured facility on Earth itself. Her face was serious, her tone measured. "The Galactic Council deserves full disclosure," said. "What Ambassador demonstrated is real, but it represents only one aspect of what humanity has preserved from our ancient past. We are prepared to share information about our cultivation practices with interested species, under strict protocols. However, we must also acknowledge a difficult truth. Early tests suggest that most alien physiologies cannot efficiently process chi the way humans do." That triggered another wave of reactions. Scientists' voice cut through the noise. "Explain. If this energy exists universally, why would biological differences matter?" The screen split to show another figure, an elderly human man whose apparent age was impossible to determine. He could have been 70 or 700. His name appeared on the display: Master of the Mountain Cloud Sect. "Because chi cultivation is not simply about gathering energy," explained, his voice surprisingly strong despite his aged appearance. "It requires a specific relationship between consciousness, physical form, and environmental energy. Human evolution, our specific neural structures, our particular form of consciousness, these create a unique capacity for chi manipulation. Other species may develop their own methods of energy cultivation, but they cannot simply copy our techniques." He gestured, and the screen showed footage of what appeared to be training sessions. Humans of all ages performing movements that seemed like dance, like martial arts, like meditation all combined. And around them, visible to the cameras, that same golden glow that had displayed. "We have tested this with willing volunteers from other species," continued. "Some show marginal ability to sense chi. Very few can manipulate it even slightly. None have achieved combat-applicable levels despite years of dedicated practice. This is not a matter of intelligence or dedication. It appears to be fundamental biological incompatibility." General spoke again, his voice hard. "So humanity possesses a unique advantage, a weapon that cannot be or countered." "It is not a weapon," said firmly. "It is a practice, a discipline, a path of personal development." "That you just used to defeat one of our finest warriors," shot back. "Because he challenged me," replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Because he insisted our legends were fake and demanded proof. I did not seek that confrontation." Silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. Humanity had revealed an advantage that made them unique in the galaxy, potentially powerful beyond their numbers or technology, and most species couldn't duplicate it. Chancellor's mental voice resonated with careful neutrality. "What does Earth propose? How should the galactic community integrate this new understanding?" Spoke from the screen, her words clearly prepared in advance. "Earth proposes the following. We will establish a cultural exchange program, sharing the philosophy and basic practices of chi cultivation with any species that requests it. We will be honest about the limitations most species will face. We will not weaponize our practitioners or use them as tools of aggressive expansion. In return, we ask that the galactic community respect our cultivation traditions as a protected cultural practice, not a military asset to be controlled or eliminated." "And if we refuse?" General asked bluntly. The chamber tensed. On the screen, Master smiled slightly, an expression that somehow conveyed both warmth and warning. "Then we will return to the shadows," he said simply. "We hid for 500 years. We can hide again, but we hope we won't have to. We hope the galaxy has evolved beyond seeing everything through the lens of advantage and threat." Another figure appeared on the screen behind. This one was younger, perhaps 40 in appearance, but something about her presence made even the projected image seem to radiate power. Her introduction appeared: Grand Master of the Eternal Dawn Monastery. "What ambassador showed you was intermediate mastery," said, her voice quiet but impossible to ignore. "What master represents is advanced mastery. I hold the title of Grand Master, one of 12 currently living on Earth. Would you like to understand the difference?" Without waiting for an answer, she raised one hand. The camera pulled back to show she was standing in what appeared to be a simple courtyard. With a gesture, she drew her hand through the air. Water rose from a nearby pond, not in a stream but as a perfect sphere, hovering in midair. Fire sparked to life around her other hand, dancing between her fingers like a living thing. The very air seemed to thicken and swirl, forming visible currents. The stones of the courtyard trembled slightly, responding to her will. "We can reshape reality through understanding and harmony with natural energy," continued calmly, as the elemental display intensified. "We can extend our lives indefinitely. We can exist in the vacuum of space without protection. We can move faster than your sensors can track and strike with force that exceeds your weapons." The elements dispersed as gently as they had gathered, lowered her hand. "But we choose not to rule. We choose not to conquer. We choose to practice our arts in peace and help those who seek the path sincerely. This is what we offer the galaxy, not soldiers but teachers, not weapons but wisdom." The feed ended, leaving the chamber in absolute silence. Finally, Chancellor spoke, her mental voice carrying a weight of decision. "The Council will deliberate on Earth's proposal. In the meantime, I mandate that no aggressive action be taken against Earth or its practitioners. We have been given a gift, knowledge of what is possible through discipline and understanding rather than technology alone. Let us prove ourselves worthy of that gift." As delegates began filing out, already forming political alliances and planning strategies, remained at the central platform. Approached her, his expression still shell-shocked. "How many?" he asked quietly. "How many Grand Masters are there really?" 12, confirmed. "That we acknowledge publicly. The truth is more complicated. There are practitioners who reached such heights that they no longer consider themselves part of any official structure. Some live in complete isolation. Some have transcended so far that they barely interact with normal reality anymore." She looked up at the dome showing the nebula beyond. "The galaxy has seen what we chose to show them. Now we wait to see if they approach it with wisdom or with greed. Either way, humanity will endure. We've faced this choice before on our own world. We'll face whatever comes." The revelation had been made. The galaxy would never see Earth the same way again. And in hidden monasteries and secret schools across human space, masters waited to see what would come next. 6 months had passed since its demonstration in the arena, and the galaxy had changed in ways both visible and subtle. Station Nexus 7 now hosted a permanent Earth cultural center, its halls filled with beings from dozens of species attempting to understand the mysteries of chi cultivation. Stood at the front of a classroom, watching his mixed group of students struggle through basic meditation techniques. There were 3 humans, 2 whose crystalline bodies refracted the morning light, one brave who had requested transfer from military service to study here, and a whose logical mind kept trying to quantify the unquantifiable. "Don't force it," said gently, walking between the seated figures. "You're not trying to grab energy or capture it. You're simply becoming aware of what's already there, all around you, all the time." The whose name was the same scientist who had monitored its demonstration opened his large eyes in frustration. "But awareness should lead to measurement. If I can sense it, I should be able to quantify it." "Maybe that's why you can't sense it yet," one of the named said quietly. Her voice chimed like wind through crystal. "I've been trying to measure and analyze for 3 months. Today I decided to just feel. and for the first time I thought I sensed something. Nodded encouragingly. That's exactly right. Qi responds to intention, to harmony, not to force or analysis. It's why the practice is called cultivation. You grow something over time, you don't build it or calculate it. He demonstrated by settling into his own meditation posture. Within seconds, a faint golden glow appeared around him, nothing like what had displayed, but enough to be visible. Several students leaned forward eagerly. I've been practicing for 15 years, explained. Every day, multiple hours. This is the result of dedicated, patient work. There are no shortcuts, no rapid advancement. The path is long. The student, whose name was, raised one of his 4 hands. Master, if I may ask, in the Empire, we achieve combat capability through genetic modification and training in months. How do you maintain discipline knowing it will take years to achieve similar results? Smiled. Because the results are not similar. Your modifications enhance your natural abilities, which is impressive. But Qi cultivation changes your fundamental relationship with reality. It's the difference between using a better tool and becoming something beyond the need for tools. He stood and gestured for to approach. Strike me. Use your full strength, the same you would use in combat. Hesitated. Master, I could hurt you. You won't, said calmly. Still uncertain, threw a controlled punch. It was fast, powerful, backed by muscle enhanced through generations of breeding. Didn't block or dodge. He simply stood there, and when the fist was inches from his chest, it stopped as if it had hit a wall of solid steel. Pulled back his hand, staring at his intact knuckles. How? Qi barrier, basic defensive technique. I didn't block your strike, the energy did. This is what separates cultivation from enhancement. Your power comes from your body. Mine comes from something deeper. The demonstration had its desired effect. The students returned to their meditation with renewed focus, even though his eyes still twitched occasionally as his scientific mind tried to categorize what it was experiencing. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic sectors of Station Nexus 7, Ambassador met with representatives from the Galactic Trade Consortium. The true to their word had granted Earth preferential trade status, but that was just the beginning. Minyu, Earth security officer assigned to monitor the new treaties, presented the latest reports. 17 species have formally requested cultural exchange programs. 9 have proposed joint research initiatives. They want to study the biological mechanisms of Qi. They are interested in the philosophical foundations. And He paused, his expression troubled. They are requesting military consultants. They want to integrate Qi practitioners into their armed forces. Sighed, we knew this would happen. Some would see the wisdom, others would see only the weapon. What did we tell them? That we don't loan out our practitioners like mercenaries, Minyu replied. They weren't happy. Generals suggested we were hoarding a military advantage. Let him suggest, said. We'll continue offering cultural exchanges and teaching to anyone who genuinely wants to learn, but we won't turn our cultivation practice into a commodity. The conversation was interrupted by a priority message from Earth. Opened it to find the Minister of Hidden Affairs, looking more serious than usual. We have a situation, she said without preamble. 3 human practitioners went missing last week. We've confirmed they were abducted by parties unknown, likely corporate interests trying to study them or extract their knowledge by force. His expression hardened. Are they alive and recovered? Confirmed. They were taken to a black site in the outer rim. The abductors didn't account for the fact that advanced practitioners can sense life energy across great distances. Master located them within 12 hours. A new video file opened, showing what appeared to be security footage. A fortified facility, walls designed to contain dangerous beings. And then a single figure appeared outside its shields, Master, looking exactly as he had in the council broadcast. What followed was brief and almost anticlimactic. Simply walked forward. The security shields, designed to stop anything from plasma weapons to kinetic bombardment, flickered and died as he approached. He didn't break them or overload them. They simply couldn't exist in the space he occupied. The armed guards who rushed to stop him never even got close. He gestured once, and they all collapsed, unconscious but unharmed. The reinforced doors opened without being touched. Within 5 minutes, he had retrieved the 3 abducted practitioners and was leaving the facility. The final frame showed him looking directly at the camera, his eyes carrying a clear message. This is what happens when you treat our people as resources to be exploited. We've sent the footage to the major galactic powers, continued. Along with a simple statement, humanity welcomes peaceful cooperation and knowledge sharing. We will respond to aggression with measured force. Those who seek to weaponize our culture will find only disappointment. Nodded slowly. Good, we need to establish boundaries early. What about the practitioners who were taken? Are they all right? Shaken but fine. They were all basic level, barely able to sense chi, let alone defend themselves with it. That's why they were targeted. The abductors thought they were taking vulnerable humans who couldn't fight back. His expression showed dark satisfaction. They learned differently. Back on Earth, in a valley hidden by mountains and ancient forest, a different conversation was taking place. Had returned home for the first time since her demonstration, seeking guidance from those who walked the path longer than she had. She knelt before Grand Master in a simple meditation hall. Around them, other practitioners moved through morning forms, their movements creating patterns of golden light in the pre-dawn darkness. You did well, said, pouring tea with movements that were simultaneously perfectly mundane and impossibly graceful. The galaxy needed to see that our legends were real, but now comes the difficult part. Managing their expectations, said, accepting the tea. Some want to learn, others want to steal, and a few want to destroy what they can't possess. An old pattern, agreed. We've seen it before, just on a smaller scale. What will you do now? Continue as an ambassador? Was quiet for a moment, watching the practitioners move through their forms. Young and old, beginners and advanced students, all walking the same path at different speeds. I want to teach, she finally said. I want to help the species who genuinely seek understanding, though especially, there's something about their crystalline nature that resonates with chi in interesting ways. They might actually develop their own cultivation methods. And those who seek to exploit, asked. Let the masters handle them, said firmly. Let and the others show the galaxy what happens when you mistake courtesy for weakness. My role is to be the bridge, the teacher, the face that shows we're not myths or monsters but people who chose a different path. Smiled. Wise words. You're ready for the next level of cultivation, you know. Another decade of dedicated practice and you might achieve mastery yourself. Maybe, said. But right now, the galaxy needs intermediate practitioners who can relate to beginners more than it needs another master who seems beyond normal understanding. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking tea as the sun rose over the mountains. In the valley below, a group of alien students had arrived for morning lessons, the first official class to be taught on Earth itself, carefully selected individuals from species who had shown genuine desire to learn. Among them was Ambassador of the, who had given up her political position to study cultivation full-time. She moved through the basic forms with awkward dedication, her crystalline body refracting the morning light in new patterns as she learned to flow with energy rather than against it. Watching from a distance, the scientist took notes compulsively, unable to help himself even as he tried to simply experience what was being taught. Old habits died hard, but he was trying. And in the back of the group, the moved with surprising grace for his size, finding that the discipline of cultivation appealed to something deep in his warrior's soul. Not the violence, but the perfection, the endless journey toward mastery. The galaxy is changing, observed quietly. The galaxy is learning, corrected. Whether that learning leads to wisdom or conflict remains to be seen, but you've given them the opportunity to choose. That's all we can do. Far above, in orbital space, monitoring satellites from a dozen different species watched Earth with new understanding. The quiet planet that had joined the galactic community with unremarkable technology and modest resources had revealed itself to be something far more significant. Its legends were not lies, its myths were not fairy tales, and its people, these seemingly ordinary humans, carried within them potential that even the most advanced civilizations had never imagined. Some species responded with curiosity, sending their best students to learn. Others responded with calculation, trying to figure out how to counter or contain this new factor in galactic politics. And a few responded with wonder, seeing in humanity's cultivation practice a different way of relating to the universe itself. The balance had shifted. Earth was no longer the newcomer to be dismissed or the primitive species to be patronized. It was the keeper of knowledge, both ancient and powerful, the living proof that advancement could take forms beyond technology and genetics. And in hidden valleys and secret monasteries across human space, masters who had lived for centuries watched the stars and smiled. The galaxy had finally asked the right question, not "what can you give us?" but "what can you teach us?" The answer to that question would shape the future of countless species for generations to come. Stood bowing respectfully to Grand Master. I should return to the station. The next group of students arrives tomorrow, and I want to review their profiles. Go, said gently. Teach them well. Show them that power without wisdom is meaningless, but wisdom with power can change worlds. As walked down the mountain path toward the transport that would take her back to space, she passed stone markers bearing inscriptions in ancient script. One caught her eye, words she had read countless times but which now felt prophetic. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The transformation of a galaxy begins with a single truth revealed. She had laughed when called Earth's legends fake. Then she had raised her hand and asked if he wanted her to prove one. That single moment had changed everything. Now the galaxy was taking its first steps on a journey that would lead to transformations no one could fully predict. And humanity, the keepers of chi cultivation, the guardians of ancient wisdom, would walk that path alongside them, not as conquerors or rulers, but as teachers and guides. The legends were real. The galaxy had learned that truth. Now came the much longer journey of learning what that truth truly meant.